Hey everyone, welcome to my new tutorial. Today we are going to create this funky, colorful keycaps animation, and I really hope you will enjoy this one. And if you do, please don't forget to leave that like. And if you're new around here and want to learn everything Blender, hit that subscribe. And if you just started Blender and you have trouble following some of the tutorials, make sure to check out my free starter course. You just sign up on my website, it's 100% free. Takes 1 to 2 hours to complete, and then you can come back here and you will have so much easier time completing the tutorials. So if you're interested, please check out the link in the description. Let's now jump into Blender and let's give the default cube opportunity to shine, and let's remake it into a keycap. So let's select it, tab into the edit mode, and we'll press G then Z and 1 to move this 1 meter up, and let's confirm. And now let's select all the vertices near the top, press G then Z and move them down somewhere here. And now let's press 3 for face select, or you can choose the face select mode right here. Select the bottom face, we don't need that one, press X and delete faces. And now let's press Ctrl R and increase number of cuts with the mouse wheel to 3, and let's confirm and right click to release in place, and let's do the same thing on the other side. And now back into the face select mode, so press 3 again and select these faces by holding shift, and we'll need to activate one add-on for this to work. So go into the edit, preferences, extensions, and search for loop tools, and you can see I have it installed right here. You will have it down there, and just click install and close the preferences. And now if you right click, you will have the loop tools add-on right here, and you can choose the circle command, and that will create the perfect circle from the faces you have selected. Now let's look from the top by pressing 7 on the numpad, and let's scale this up a little bit like this. And now let's press I to inset like that, and press G then Z and move this up a little bit like this. And now press E to extrude and E to extrude once again like this, and press I to inset to create a supporting loop here as well. And we'll need some supporting loops around the keycaps as well, so press 2 for edge select, alt click this loop, and now hold alt and shift and select these other ones, and don't forget the ones on the side here. And we'll use the bevel tool for this, so press Ctrl B and bevel and increase number of cuts to 2, and let's create something like this, confirm. And now here, if you expand the bevel options, you can increase the profile shape, and it will enable you to create supporting loops like this. So now we can tab out and just press Ctrl 2 to add subdivision modifier with 2 levels of subdivision. You can see it in the modifiers right here, or you can just go ahead and add modifier as always in generate and subdivision surface and enable 2 levels in the viewport. Now right click, shade smooth. Now of course you might need to change the proportions of this, so if you tab into the edit mode, you can press 3 for face select, alt click these loops and hold alt and shift and add to the selection. And now if you press S then shift Z, you can scale this up just like this, and then you can look from the front, enable X-ray view, select everything near the top, press G then Z and move it down like this, so it's a little bit more subtle. Now let's disable the X-ray view, tab out of the edit mode, and let's add more of these keycaps. So let's add an array modifier, and let's increase the count to something like 10. And now let's add another one, change the offset X to 0 and offset Y to 1, and let's do 10 as well. Now let's look from the camera by pressing 0 on a numpad, and let's press N to expand the side panel. And in the view settings you have the camera to view option, and if you enable this, you will be able to position your camera with your viewport controls. So let's do just that. Let's find some nice view like this, and I want to go into the output settings and change the resolution to 1600 to 1200 and play a little bit more with the composition to create something like this. We can go a little bit closer like that. And now don't forget to disable this so you're able to move freely around. And let's press N to hide the side panel. If you want to accelerate your Blender journey, also check out my other courses where you can learn everything from simple low poly design all the way to full character illustration, textured environments, and with the latest one, even full car modeling and animation. So if you're interested, please check out the link in the description. And now we'll need to give this some materials. So let's expand the timeline here and let's switch it to shader editor. And with the default material from the cube already in place, we can just start creating the material right away. But before we do, let's switch to the render preview. So in the render settings, I will switch to cycles, enable GPU, and enable denoising, and switch my render denoising to GPU so I don't forget it, and set this to something like 512. And now let's hold Z and switch to rendered preview, and we can press Ctrl B and limit the preview only to the camera bounce. Now we have the one default light from the default scene, so press X and delete it. And let's press Shift A and let's add a sunlight. And I'll press R, then X and 45 to rotate 45 degrees, and then R, then Z and minus 45. So we have this nice light from the side here. And in the light settings, I will increase the strength to something like 4, so it's much brighter. And in the world settings, we can go a little bit darker, so we have a little bit more contrast in the scene. And now we are ready to work with our materials. So let's select our object, and here I will use a procedural noise texture to add some visual interest to this. So let's press Shift A and let's search for noise and just add the noise texture. And if you don't have the Node Wrangler add-on active, go Edit, Preferences. And this one will probably not be in extensions, but in the add-ons, because it comes pre-downloaded with Blender, it's just not activated. So go into the add-ons and search for Wrangler. Just check the box to activate it. If you for some reason don't see it here, or it gets changed in the next Blender versions, you can search for it in the extensions, but it should be in the add-ons. So just check the box, close the preferences. And now if you hit Ctrl and T in the node editor, it will create this mapping node for you. And another useful shortcut with the Wrangler is if you hold Ctrl and Shift and click whatever node, it will preview it. And that's exactly what I want to do. And now I'll press Shift A and add a ramp. So let's search for ramp and pick the color ramp, plug it right here, and let's compress this quite a lot so we create these like speckles. We can go a little bit further away from the middle like this, and let's go really near the other one so it nearly flips, something like this. And now we can play with the scale. We can go something like 10, and let's move this even further away. Okay, something like that. And now I'll just duplicate the noise texture and the color ramp. So let's select these two and press Shift D and duplicate them. And here we'll increase the scale to 20. So now you can see this will be a little bit more dense. Let's move this to the side here. And let's press Shift A and let's search for mix. And we're looking for color, mix color node. Plug this right here, but make sure this is in B. And right here we can increase the mix all the way to 1 and switch from mix to, let's say, multiply. So basically we are adding those together. If you look, this is the result of the first one, and this is the other one with the scale of 20. And now we add them together so we have, you know, a little bit more variety with the speckles. And we don't need the mapping node here, so we can press Ctrl X here to just get rid of it. And let's plug in the object so the distribution is a little bit better, and let's plug this right here. So the object coordinates will basically map the texture so it goes from, you know, the origin point of the object in a uniform way, so there will be no stretching or anything like that, as opposed to the generated, which are based on the bounding box of the object. So now we can just plug this here in the base color and plug the principled back in, or you can just Ctrl Shift and click it with the Wrangler add-on. And this is the base speckles. Let's move them to the side a little bit, because now I want to give this a little bit of a color. So let's press Shift A and let's do another mix color node right here. And let's just plug this here into the B color. And we can change this to multiply and play with the factor. So depending on how strong the speckles need to be, you can increase the factor or decrease. And now let's play with the roughness a little bit, because I want these to be a little bit glossy, but not on those speckles. So we can just plug this here into the roughness, but I will now press Shift A, search for invert and choose invert color and plug this right here. And now you can see if you reduce this, you can control the roughness. There is a glossy roughness on the keycaps, but the speckles themselves will be rough. So that will add a little bit of a, refinement when the light hits these keycaps. So this is the base material we're gonna create, and now I want to separate some of these caps and do like really bold colors. So first of all, let's go to the modifiers and let's apply the array modifier. So you can just click here and hit apply, or you can hover and hit Ctrl A on the keyboard to apply selected modifier. And now this is basically one single object, and we can choose some of the caps we want to separate. So let's tab into the edit mode, press 1 for vertex select, and if you just hover over some vertex and hit L, it will select all the linked vertices. So let's select some of these, something like that, and now we can press P and separate that selection. So we'll basically have one object that's kind of filler for the scene, and then we have these separated, and I want to separate them even further because I want them animated individually. So let's tab into the edit mode and let's press P and separate by loose parts, and that will create an object for each of the separated meshes. And now we can tab out, right click and set origin to geometry. That will create individual origin for each of these caps, and now these are separated objects. And before we do anything else, we'll need a different material for these. So let's go to the materials and let's just duplicate the material. That happens only on this yellow because that's one active. These others are only selected, and now we can press Ctrl L and link materials. So now we linked that material to all of these others, and we are able to change the color. So for example, if I choose to make these darker, I can do that, no problem. And now we can just select each of them individually and do whatever we want with them. And now in terms of those color, we can make it a little bit random. So if you press Shift A and search for random, look for object information, that's here, input object info random, and now that will give you a random number for each separate object. And now let's press Shift A and we can add a color ramp. And now let's add those bold colors. If you just plug this here for now and hit Ctrl Shift and preview this ramp, you will see the different color from this grayscale. So now we can switch this to constant and add few more color stops, and now click here and distribute stops evenly. And now if you start changing these colors, you will see how it happens in the scene. So let's go all the way bright here and let's create like a bold orange color, something like this. Now for the next one, I want to create like a strong purple color. I really want to go for these like neon bold colors here, really strong green color. And the last one can be like a really strong saturated blue, something like this. So now that we have random colors, we can just plug them right here into this color. So as you can see, this material was already prepared for this, and we can just plug this right here and plug the principled shader back in, and we have different colors of all of those keycaps. And now let's animate them. So I will hold Z, switch to the solid view, select everything here and hold Ctrl and deselect the background one, so we have only the individual keycaps selected. We can collapse this a little bit and drag out a new window and switch this to timeline. And now let's set the animation length to something like 120 frames, and let's go into the output settings and switch frame rate to 30. And let's create our first animation here. So press N for the side panel, and in the item menu, let's right click and insert single keyframe for the Z location. And now let's move to like frame 6 and let's push this down. As you can see, only the active gets animated like this. Right click and insert single keyframe, and now we can select the first one, press Shift D and duplicate it and place it somewhere here like on frame 12 or something like that. And now to make this a little bit more punchy, because now this is what we have here, we can press Ctrl Tab in the timeline, and with the Ctrl and middle mouse button you can zoom in on your animation by dragging left and right and up and down. And now here I want to drag this handle, make it a little bit more punchy here, and also make this a little bit more aggressive, so we have some easing out there. something like this. And now if you preview the movement, it's much more fluent. We can maybe make this a little bit more eased out like this. Okay, I really like this. And now with all of these selected, and if you for some reason deselected them, remember you can just select everything here, hold Control and deselect this. And don't forget to deselect the camera as well by dragging over the corner. And with all of these selected and this one is active, you can press Ctrl L and link animation data. So now if you do that, you will see all of them get animated. And now we need to separate the animation data and just shift them around. Of course, you might argue some of this stuff is better done with geometry nodes. Of course, that's true if you have time and patience to tinker with geometry nodes, but this is kind of more straightforward traditional approach to animation. And I think for this kind of beginner focused tutorial, it's much more suitable. So let's now go to object menu, and here we'll have relation, make single user and object animation. And what that will do will basically detach every animation, so it will not be affected by the original animation. So let's detach them. So now each of them, even though they are still animated the same, if I for example select this one, let me hit Ctrl Tab here to go back to the timeline. Now if I just grab everything here and press G and move it right here, you can see now this one will go a little bit later. So each of those caps now has its own animation. We just need to shift it around. So let's switch to the material preview so we better see the colored ones, and let's just move around and shift those animation. If you want to better see how these animations are spread out, you can just select all of them by holding Shift. And now let's expand this on the side, and you will need to collapse this so you don't have two rows for each of the objects. And now you can see the different animations right here, and you can just select them like this and move them around. So this will make it really easy to kind of shift those animations and spread them out in your animation timeline. Like this. Okay. And let's select this one. Now move it right here. And if you made it a little bit too long, don't worry about this. You can just select all of them and press S to scale them back towards your cursor. Make sure this is on the frame 1 because it will scale according to position of this. So let's make sure we have something like that. And now if you play it back, you have nice key press animation here. And to make this a little bit more interesting, we can animate the camera as well. So let's select the camera, let's finalize our shot. So I will go back to the view menu and enable camera to view, and let's place the camera somewhere here like this. Let's disable that, and on the frame 1 we can press G then X, move the camera here, and in the item menu right click the X location and insert single keyframe. And now let's move all the way to frame 120, press G then X and move it somewhere here. It'll be very subtle movement, and right click and insert single keyframe. And now let's press A to select all. And to better see what's happening, let's press Ctrl Tab again to go into the graph editor. And if you don't see your animation here, you can hit period on a numpad to focus on your animation. Otherwise you can hold Control and just zoom in on your animation like this. And now you can see this is not linear, so the animation will start slowly and then it will decelerate. So if you press T, and this works in the timeline as well, you can just switch this to linear, and now this will be a straight line, so it will be just a nice constant movement, which is exactly what I want for like a panning camera shot like this. So now the animation is ready, the colors are ready somewhat. Maybe we can make these speckles a little bit more present with the colored ones, and since these materials are separated, we can just play with the factor here. And now one other thing to make this a little bit more interesting is to add decals, and let me change the color on some of these. Maybe this needs to get a little bit darker. Okay, something like this. And now for the decals, I really like to use UCU Paint add-on for this because it makes it really easy. It does a lot of work for you. So So let me just find the add-on right here. I have it on the right side. If you don't have it active, just go edit preferences again, and in the extensions search for UCU, and you will see the UCU Paint add-on, and just click install. It will download and install the add-on. It's that simple. And then just close the preferences, and whatever material you have selected, you can create the UCU Paint node setup, and it will not mess up your material. Let me show you how this works, but we'll need to separate materials. So let's select the purple one, for example, and in the material settings, let's just duplicate the material. It will have a new suffix here, and now click quick setup and hit OK, and you will see right here, it will just plug the UCU Paint node in between what you already had. So you didn't lose anything, you still have your procedural workflow, your noise texture, you can still change all of these settings, and then it's plugged into UCU Paint material, and you can further paint on it, use decals, whatever you want. So I really like this workflow. And now here we can just add a new layer in the layers section. So let's hit plus, and I will open it. And now I have all of these decals. I bought them a long time ago, probably on ArtStation or somewhere. So unfortunately I cannot share them with you because these are paid, but you can just go on and Google, you know, transparent PNG decals, science fiction decals or something like that, and you should be able to find similar images like this and use something to test out this method. And then when it works for you, you know, you can use. So I will choose one of them here, for example the X one, and open image to layer. Now you can see this layer gets applied over, but here I can choose the vector, and I will change it from UV to decal, and they'll basically create a decal object that helps you to map this. So if you expand this, you can select the decal object, and unfortunately it got created on the position of the cursor. So I'll just hit 7 on a numpad and press G and move it over here, and then press G then Z and move it up. And the moment it gets close here, you know, over the cap, it starts projecting the texture. And you can press S to make it larger or smaller. It's really easy to use, and you know, you can add more layers, more decals. You can change how this, you know, interacts. So for example here I can go to the channel settings and change the mix to, you know, make it a little bit more, to make it less strong like this. So, and that's exactly what I want to do. And then you can go on and create multiple decals like this. So I thought it will be useful to show you how you can, you know, refine an animation like this. And now let's get back to it. Let's refine the lighting. So press N to hide the panel and hit 0 on a numpad for a camera view. And now let's hold Z and switch to rendered preview. And now I think this will need a little bit more light, and I'm gonna add some HDRI here. So I'll switch from object to world. And now let me expand one more window here and switch to asset browser, because I have all of the Polyhaven HDRIs here in the asset, and I can choose, for example, indoor, natural light, and choose something, you know, something like this that offers nice reflections, and I can just drag it here into the scene and it will enable that HDRI. This works with the Polyhaven add-on that you can purchase very cheaply from Polyhaven. I think it's a nice way to support them, since all of the assets there are open source and free. But if you don't want to do that, you can just go to polyhaven.com, download the HDRI, and then here, instead of this, you will just press Shift A, search for environment texture, and just plug it right here. And of course you can use Ctrl T to add mapping and rotate it around, because that's exactly what I'm gonna do right now. So remember, you can add environment texture, load up your HDRI that you downloaded from Polyhaven, and then press Ctrl T to add mapping and use rotation controls right here. So let me just delete this, and I will go ahead and change the HDRI, because this one is a little bit too soft. There's not one particular source of light there. So let's find another one. I will just drop it in the scene here. And now this one has some particular light from this direction. So I can sync it up with my sunlight. I will just rotate this until I have the window here. Okay, something like this. And now if I look from the side, you can see the reflections are a little bit nicer. Though it's a little bit too strong, let me collapse this. So I can reduce the strength of this, and you can do that with the environment texture node as well. So I will reduce this to something like -1, even -2 probably. Or you can just go ahead, disable the sunlight, you can press H to hide it, and then find really soft influence for the HDRI, and then press Alt H to unhide your sunlight, and you should have much nicer lighting results. And now let's press Shift A and let's add another light. Let's add area light, press G then Z, move this up, let's make it larger, and we can do something really strong like 10K, and you will see it will create this nice fall off from the side. You can even move this around a little bit, and that will add a little bit more punch to your lighting, something like this here. So now I really love this, and one final step I want to do is to play with the color management here. So let's go to the render settings, color management section. Instead of AGX, let's use Assist 2 because that gives you more color range, more dynamic range, and I really like the punchy color it gives for this type of design. And we can play with the exposure now, and you can see this is much better than before, much more punchy and much more dominant lighting. So that's it for the lighting. Now I will just select the camera, and in the camera settings enable depth of field, and we can go to the viewport display, enable limits, and play with the focus distance. So let's focus on the keycap right here, and then let's reduce the f-stop to something like 1.2. It will give us the nice blur in the background there. And finally, since this is animation, in the render settings I can enable motion blur, and then in the output just change the media type to video, and in the encoding section let's switch this to MP4, choose your folder and just hit render, render animation. Though you might consider playing with the samples in the render settings, I have set this to 512, maybe something like 128 will be more suitable for quick animation render. So that's it for today's animation, and I really hope you enjoyed this one. And again, if you did, please leave that like, and if you're new around here and want to learn more, hit that subscribe. Thank you all for watching, and have a wonderful day.